The Xerion scout vessel Emerald Tier drifted through the debris field like a dying leaf caught in a cosmic storm. Its once gleaming bio-luminescent hull, woven from living metal and photosynthetic fiber networks, now flickered erratically, amber and emerald light pulsing in weak, irregular bursts. The ship's organic architecture, grown over decades in the orbital nurseries of Xerion Prime, was ruptured in a dozen places. Its vine-like support structures split open like broken stems, leaking vital fluids. Commander Xerwind clutched the navigation console, her four-fingered hands trembling as she fought to stabilize the dying ship. The battle had been a massacre. The GU's Emerald Tier was never meant to engage in combat. It was a research vessel, its smooth, biomechanical systems designed for delicate scans and passive observation. But the pirates had shown no mercy. Their plasma lances had carved through the tiers, living armor as if it were mere foliage. And now the ship's once harmonious hum of photosynthetic energy had degraded into a labored, sputtering wheeze. Behind her, Ersek, the ship's chief scientist, curled protectively around his offspring, a small, trembling bundle of bioluminescent limbs tucked against his chest. The child's glow was dimming, their energy reserves depleted by the trauma of the attack. Xerion young required constant nourishment from their ship's energy webs, and without them, Xerwind forced herself not to think about it. The sensors flickered weakly, casting sickly green reflections across the bridge. Then, an anomaly, Ersek's crest of sensory tendrils stiffened. "Commander, something is out there." Xerwind's stomach tightened. Pirates returning to finish the job. Another scavenger drawn to their distress beacon. The scanner resolved the image, and Xerwind's breath caught. But not like any she had ever seen. Where Xerion vessels flowed with organic curves and pulsing veins of bioenergy, this construct was angular, brutal, forged from cold, unyielding alloys. Its hull was scarred, pitted with the marks of countless battles, yet it radiated an aura of defiance. No elegant photosynthetic glow here, only the harsh, unwavering glare of fusion, powered floodlights cutting through the void. Xerwind's pulse quickened. The Galactic Concord had warned about them. Primitives, they called them. Violent. Unpredictable. A species that had clawed its way to the stars through sheer, bloody-minded stubbornness. And now one of their warships had found them. Ersek made a low, fearful sound, pulling his child closer. "They'll tear us apart for salvage." Xerwind didn't answer. She was too busy watching as the human vessel, designation UNS Resolute, altered course, not toward them in attack. Around them. A protective maneuver. Then a transmission raw, unfiltered, devoid of the elegant harmonic frequencies Xerion comms used. Just a voice, rough but firm. "Xerion vessel, this is Major Lisa Anderson of the United Nations Soul Defense. You look like you could use a hand." Xerwind stared. No demand for tribute, no threats. Just an offer, Ersek's child whimpered, their glow flickering dangerously. Xerwind made a decision. She opened the channel. And for the first time in her life, she asked a human for help. The human warship loomed closer, its angular hull swallowing the void. Xerwind had seen many vessels in her time, elegant Xerion bioships, sleek Keldian interceptors, but nothing like this. The UNS Resolute was a brutalist slab of armor and firepower, its surface pocked with scars from battles fought in the dark. Yet, for all its menace, it moved with deliberate care, adjusting its trajectory to avoid even the slightest gravitational disturbance near their crippled vessel. Ersek's child shivered in his arms, their bioluminescence dimming, a sign of fading energy, of approaching death. Xerwind's own body ached, her veins burning with the slow poison of their failing life support. The Xerion were photosynthetic, their bodies sustained by light, and the ship's energy webs had collapsed hours ago. Without intervention, they would wither. The human voice had offered help. Not conquest, not plunder. Xerwind's instincts screamed at her to distrust. The galactic consensus had warned of humans, how they fought like cornered beasts, how they built weapons that defied reason. But the S-Resolute did not fire. It did not demand surrender. It simply waited, its massive engines humming at standby, as if patient. Then, a new transmission, a docking request. Arsec recoiled. They'll board us. His voice was thin with fear. They'll take what's left. Serwind hesitated, but the child's flickering glow decided for her. She accepted. The airlock cycled with a hiss of foreign atmosphere, oxygen, rich, heavy with the scent of metal and something else. Something warm. Human air. Then the figures emerged. Serwind had expected warriors clad in killing machines, bristling with weapons. Instead, she saw a woman in a simple black uniform, her dark hair pulled back, her face lined with fatigue, and something else. Concern. Major Lisa Anderson. Behind her stood a soldier, Captain Nathan Weir, his armor scarred but his stance relaxed, his weapon holstered. No threats, no raised guns, just two humans, standing in the wreckage of a dying ship, looking at them like they mattered. Anderson knelt, her movements slow, deliberate. She reached into a medical kit, withdrawing a device Serwind didn't recognize, a portable AV emitter. Its light calibrated to Xerion photosynthetic needs. This should stabilize them, she said, her voice low, as if afraid to startle them. Ersic flinched as the light washed over his child. But then, the flickering steadied. The dim glow brightened. The child lived. Serwind's breath caught. This was not the act of predators. This was mercy. And then, as if to shatter all her assumptions at once, Weir spoke, his voice rough but amused. You know, for a species that's supposed to be fragile, you guys are holding up pretty damn well. Serwind stared at him. And for the first time since the humans had arrived, she felt something unfamiliar. Serwind's bioluminescent markings pulsed erratically as she watched the human commander work. Anderson's hands moved with precision, adjusting the UV emitter's wavelength to match Xerion photosynthetic rhythms. The device hummed softly, its light bathing the child in a warm, golden-green glow, so different from the harsh, pulsing energy of Xerion technology. Ersec's child stirred, his small limbs twitching as his fading energy reserves stabilized. The sight sent a ripple of shock through Serwind's neural tendrils. They knew. The humans had studied them, not just as enemies, but as living beings with biological needs. That realization was more unsettling than any weapon. Weir stood nearby, his posture relaxed, but his eyes never stopped scanning the wreckage. His rifle was slung across his back, but Serwind had seen how fast he could bring it to bear. Yet now he wasn't a soldier, he was a guardian, watching over them as Anderson worked. Serwind's mind raced. This was a trap. It had to be. Mercy was a luxury no predator could afford in the void. Then the ship groaned. A deep, metallic shudder ran through the deck, followed by the distant hiss of ruptured conduits. The humans tensed instantly. Weir's hand went to his comm. Anderson, we've got a problem. She didn't look up. How bad? Secondary reactors destabilizing. If it blows, this whole section goes with it. Serwind's neural tendrils flared in alarm. The Xerion vessel was dying, its organic energy webs fraying, its photosynthetic power cells leaking corrosive plasma. If the reactor detonated, none of them would survive. Anderson finally stood, her expression grim. We need to move. Now. Ersic clutched his child tighter, his bioluminescence flickering with distress. The escape pods, they were destroyed in the attack. Weir exhaled sharply. Then we go on foot. There's a human dropship docked 3 sectors over. Serwind hesitated. A human ship. Walking into their territory willingly was insanity. But staying meant death. Anderson must have seen the conflict in her stance. You don't have to trust us, she said quietly. But right now, we're the only way out. Another tremor rocked the ship. A ceiling panel tore loose, crashing to the deck in a shower of sparks. The decision was made for her. Lead the way, Serwind said. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, Weir taking point. Anderson supporting Ersec as he carried his child. The corridors were a nightmare of flickering bio, luminescent lights, and ruptured organic conduits. Their yellow-green energy bleeding into the air like poison. Then the first ambush hit, a Xerion security drone, left behind, damaged but still functional, unfurled from a maintenance alcove, its monomolecular limbs lashing out. Ware reacted before Cerwin could even shout a warning. His rifle snapped up, a single shot punching through the drone's core. It collapsed, its limbs twitching in death throes. Cerwin stared. That shot had been this perfect, a kill strike through the weakest point in Xerion biomechanical armor. Ware didn't even slow down, keep moving. The second drone dropped from above. This time, Cerwin was ready. She lunged, her neural tendrils discharging a burst of electric energy. The drone spasmed, its systems overloading, but not before its limb grazed Ersek's shoulder, drawing a thin line of emerald blood. Anderson was there instantly, pressing a clotting patch to the wound. "You okay?" Ersek nodded shakily. Cerwin's mind reeled. The humans fought like S-pack hunters, covering each other, reacting without hesitation. And now, impossibly, they were extending that protection to her people. The reactor's whine grew louder, a rising scream of impending destruction. "Run," Ware barked. They sprinted, the humans matching their pace to the Xerion's slower, more deliberate movements. The final corridor stretched before them, the air thick with the scent of burning organic circuits. Then, light, the human dropship's ramp lowered, its interior a stark contrast to Xerion design. Angular, metallic, lit by harsh white luminescence. Cerwin hesitated at the threshold. Anderson turned back, her hand outstretched. "Come on," she said. "We've got you." And for the second time that cycle, Cerwin made a choice she never thought she would. She stepped into the human ship. Behind them, the Xerion vessel tore itself apart in a silent, emerald fireball. The human dropship shuddered as it tore free from the dying Xerion vessel, its thrusters flaring white, hot against the void. Cerwin clutched the bulkhead, her bioluminescent veins pulsing erratically as she watched her ship, her Oz home, crumple into a storm of emerald plasma. The sight should have filled her with grief. Instead, she felt only a hollow numbness, her mind still reeling from the impossible choice she had just made. The human vessel was nothing like Xerion design. Where her people's ships flowed with organic curves and symbiotic technology, this craft was all brutal angles and exposed machinery. The walls hummed with the deep, rhythmic thrum of fusion reactors, and the air carried the sharp tang of ozone and steel. It was alive, but not in the way Cerwin understood life, not with the quiet pulse of photosynthetic energy, but with the raw, untamed growl of controlled explosions. Ersek stumbled beside her, his frilled crest flattened against his skull in distress. His eyes darted across the human soldiers, lingering on their weapons, ugly, blocky things that lacked the elegance of Xerion pulse lances. Yet those crude tools had saved them. Major Anderson moved through the compartment with practiced ease, her gloved fingers dancing across a console. Data flickered across screens in jagged, alien script. "Strap in," she said, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "We're not clear yet." Cerwin obeyed, her fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar restraints. The harness bit into her chitinous plating, too rigid, too harsh, just like everything else about these humans. Then the ship lurched violently, a proximity alarm shrieked. On the view screen, a sleek Xerion interceptor emerged from the debris field, its hull shimmering with the telltale ripple of active camouflage dissipating. Its weapon pods unfolded like the petals of a deadly flower, glowing with the sickly green light of charged plasma. Captain Ware cursed under his breath. They were waiting. Anderson didn't flinch. Evasive pattern Delta. Prepare countermeasures. The dropship twisted sharply, throwing Cerwin against her restraints. Outside, the stars blurred into streaks as the human pilot executed maneuvers that should have shattered their bones. The Xerion interceptor fired, a searing lance of emerald energy that missed by meters. close enough to scorch the outer hull. Ersek whimpered, his voice barely audible over the ship's groaning metal. They won't stop. They'll burn us from the sky before they let us reach human space. Serwin knew he was right. The High Command would never allow this humiliation, a Xerion commander fleeing aboard an enemy vessel. They would erase all of them, before letting the truth spread. Then something unexpected happened. Major Anderson turned to them, her expression unreadable behind her visor. But when she spoke, her voice was softer. "You're not prisoners," she said. "And we don't leave people behind." Before Serwin could process the words, the human tapped a command into her wrist console. The dropship's ventral bay hissed open. A sleek, angular shape dropped into the void, a human drone, its wings unfolding like a predator's claws. It streaked toward the interceptor, its thrusters flaring crimson. The Xerion ship reacted instantly, swiveling its guns to track the new threat. But the drone didn't fire. Instead, it latched onto the interceptor's hull, its limbs piercing the organic armor like surgical blades. Then it detonated. The explosion wasn't the clean, photosynthetic burst of Xerion weaponry. It was a savage, chemical fireball, a bloom of orange and black that consumed the interceptor whole. The shockwave rattled the dropship, and for a heartbeat, the entire viewport was filled with burning debris. Silence followed. Ersek stared, his frills trembling. You sacrificed your own machine." Anderson's lips curled, not in triumph, but something darker. "We don't like losing people," she said. "But we really don't like losing fights." Serwin exhaled slowly, her mind reeling. These humans didn't just fight, they endured. They tore pieces from themselves if it meant survival. And somehow, they had just done it for her. The realization settled like a weight in her chest. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now, so had she. The dropship shuddered as it breached the outer debris field, its hull groaning under the strain of atmospheric entry. Serwin clutched the command console, her talons digging into the bioluminescent interface. The ship's organic fibers pulsed erratically, their usual rhythmic glow now a frantic staccato of yellow, green distress. Outside, the wreckage of the battle still burned. Ersek's frills flared as he parsed the sensor data. "Commander, we're detecting a distress beacon, Xerion signature, faint but alive. It's coming from the derelict Vineshroud." Serwin's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a moment. The Vineshroud had been a scout vessel, lost in the first volley of the ambush. If anyone had survived its destruction, they would be clinging to life by threads. Anderson was already moving before Serwin could speak. "We're diverting," the human commander said, her voice leaving no room for debate. Serwin bristled. "That wreck is a death trap. The structural integrity. I's failing." "Yes," Anderson cut in. "But if there's someone alive in there, we're not leaving them." The human dropship banked hard, its thrusters flaring as it carved a new trajectory through the debris. Serwin watched, torn between disbelief and something uncomfortably close to awe. Humans were supposed to be reckless, selfish, yet here they were, risking themselves for a species that had, until moments ago, been their enemy. The Vineshroud was a carcass, its once elegant mechanical hull had split open like a gutted fruit, spilling twisted vines of living metal into the void. The distress signal pulsed weakly from its ruptured core. As the dropship docked, the humans moved with terrifying efficiency. Ware and two others donned exo suits, their armor sealing with a hiss of pressurized hydraulics. Anderson stayed behind, her fingers dancing over a holodisplay, but her eyes never left the derelict. Serwin followed them in. The interior was a graveyard of flickering bioluminescence. The walls, once smooth and pulsing with photosynthetic energy, were now blackened and brittle. The air reeked of scorched organic matter, a scent Serwin knew too well. Then, a sound, faint. A warble of pain. Ware was the first to reach them. A Xerion female, her carapace cracked, one limb severed at the joint. Beneath her, curled in a protective coil, was a juvenile. The mother's frills lifted weakly as the humans approached. Her eyes, though dim, burned with defiance. She hissed, a sound meant to ward off predators. Ware didn't flinch. He knelt, his armored fingers moving to his helmet's release. Xerion lunged. Are you insane? Our atmosphere is toxic too. The seal broke with a whisper of escaping air. Ware's face remained impassive as he pulled a medkit from his belt. Not as toxic as bleeding out, he said, and pressed a coagulant patch to the mother's wound. The Xerion female recoiled, then stilled as the pain began to ebb. Her frills trembled, not with fear but confusion. Ersic exhaled sharply. They're helping. Xerion couldn't speak. The humans worked in silence, stabilizing the injured, sealing breaches in the derelict's hull with emergency foam that hardened like chitin. The juvenile, once trembling, now clung to Ware's armored forearm, its tiny claws unable to pierce the composite plating. Anderson's voice crackled over the comms. We've got maybe 5 minutes before this wreck collapses. Move. Ware gathered the juvenile in one arm, the mother in the other, and carried them both back to the dropship, as if they weighed nothing. Xerion followed, her mind a storm. These creatures had just butchered an entire ambush fleet with ruthless precision. And now, without hesitation, they were saving lives they had no reason to save. The galaxy called humans monsters, but monsters didn't kneel in the wreckage of a battle and tend to the wounded. The dropship's engines roared to life as it tore free of the Weineshrod. Behind them, the derelict finally succumbed, its spine snapping as it collapsed into the void. Inside, the rescued Xerion mother stared at Ware, her frills slowly relaxing. The human merely nodded, and in that moment, Xerion understood something fundamental. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their brutality, it was their capacity to choose mercy. The dropship shuddered as it broke free of the Weinesrod's gravitational pull, its engines flaring blue against the void. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of ozone and the faint, sickly sweet tang of Xerion blood. The rescued mother clutched her child close, her bioluminescent frills pulsing erratically, fear, relief, exhaustion. Captain Nathan Ware stood motionless beside them, his armored frame still humming with residual heat from the battle. His visor was retracted, revealing a face that should have been alien to Xerion, ridged brow, blunt features, skin too pale under the ship's harsh lighting. Yet there was something in his expression that transcended species. Something she recognized. Protectiveness. Ersic, the Xerion scientist, had been silent since they boarded, his tendrils coiled tight against his body. Now he finally spoke, his voice a whisper of rustling leaves. Why? Ware didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into a compartment on his thigh armor and withdrew a small medkit. The device was sleek, human-made, but its purpose was universal. He activated it, and a soft blue light spilled over the juvenile's injuries, sealing torn membranes and knitting fractured chitin. The mother's frills flared in shock. Xerion understood. The humans had no reason to expend resources on them. No reason beyond the simple, terrifying fact that they'd chose to. Ware finally looked at Ersic. Because we could. A pause. Then, quieter. And because once, someone did the same for us. The words settled like a weight. Xerion had studied human history, their wars, their near extinctions, their stubborn clawing back from the brink. She had assumed their survival was due to brutality alone. But now, watching Ware kneel beside the injured, she wondered if she had missed something vital. The dropship's comm crackled. Major Anderson's voice cut through the tension. Ware status. Survivors secured, he replied. One adult, one juvenile. Both stable. A beat of silence, then grudging approval. Good. Get them to this Resolute's medbay. Xerion, you're with me. Xerion's spine stiffened. She had expected interrogation, perhaps even execution. Not. This, the human warship Resolute loomed ahead, its angular hull a stark contrast to the organic curves of Xerion vessels. As they docked, Serwyn braced herself for the sterile, mechanical interior she had always associated with human ships. Instead, she stepped into chaos. The medbay was alive with motion, human medics tending to wounded Xerion prisoners, their hands moving with clinical precision. A young human medic, her dark hair pulled into a tight braid, was adjusting a bio-regulator on a Xerion soldier's shattered limb. The soldier's frills were flared in pain, but the medic murmured something too low for Serwyn to hear, and the tension in his body eased. Anderson stood at the center of it all, her arms crossed, watching. When she spotted Serwyn, she tilted her head toward a side chamber. Serwyn followed. The room was small, its walls lined with data screens flickering with battle reports. Anderson leaned against the central console, her gaze unreadable. "You're wondering why we're doing this?" Serwyn hesitated. "Yes." Anderson exhaled, long and slow. "Because we're not your enemy. Not unless you force us to be." She tapped a command into the console, and a holographic star map flared to life. Xerion territory highlighted in pulsing amber, human colonies in stark blue. "Your high command thinks we're weak. That will break under pressure." Her lips curled, just slightly. "Very wrong." Serwyn studied the map. The human colonies were fewer, yes, but their defensive lines were precise, calculated, not the desperate sprawl of a dying species, but the deliberate positioning of a predator waiting to strike back. Anderson continued. "We could have glassed your outposts after the first attack. We didn't." She met Serwyn's eyes. "Mercy isn't weakness, Commander. It's a choice, and right now, I'm offering you another one." Serwyn's frills tingled. "What choice?" "Walk away." Anderson's voice was quiet, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. "Tell your people what you saw here. Or don't, but know this: if you come for us again, we won't hold back." The unspoken truth hung between them. "You won't survive it." First, Serwyn looked back toward the medbay, where Ware stood guard over the mother and child, where humans and Xerion coexisted, if only for this fleeting moment. She had spent her life believing humanity was a plague. Now, she wasn't so sure, and that was the most terrifying realization of all. Serwyn's frills remained rigid as she paced the human vessel's observation deck, her claws clicking against the strange, cold metal beneath her. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the reinforced glass, unchanged, indifferent. But as she had changed, the human warship Indomitable was not what she had expected. She had anticipated rusted bulkheads, jury, rig systems, the stench of desperation clinging to every corridor. Instead, the ship hummed with quiet precision, its architecture a seamless blend of brutal functionality and eerie elegance. The walls were smooth, almost organic in their curvature, yet lined with recessed weapon ports and shielded conduits pulsing with blue, white energy. This was not a ship built by reckless apes. This was the work of predators who had learned patience. Her secondary eyes flicked toward the medbay, where the human soldier, Weir, stood watch over the wounded Xerion mother and her hatchling. The female's breathing had stabilized, her bioluminescent veins dim, but steady under the human's foreign machines. The child clung to her, its frills trembling with exhaustion rather than fear. They saved them. The thought coiled in her gut like a venomous serpent. Ersek approached, his own frills twitching in unease. "The scans are complete," he murmured, his voice barely above a subsonic hum. "Their armor, it's not just layered. It adapts." Serwyn turned sharply. "Explain." Ersek's claws flexed, his bioluminescence flickering with agitation. "The outer plating isn't static. It reconfigures in real-time, shifting density, altering composition based on incoming fire. Our energy lances. They've already developed countermeasures. The more we hit them, the stronger their defenses become." A cold ripple traveled down Serwyn's spine. This wasn't just resilience, this was evolution. And then the alarms blared. The human ship's lighting shifted instantly, bathing the corridors in pulsing crimson. Anderson's voice crackled through the comms. calm but edged with lethal focus. All hands, battle stations. Incoming hostiles. Serwin's frills flared in alarm. Weir was already moving, his armored form cutting through the chaos with practiced ease. "Your people," he said, his voice grim. "They didn't wait for your report." The observation deck screens flickered to life, displaying the void outside. A Xerion fleet had arrived, dozens of sleek, vine-wrapped warships, their organic hulls glowing with emerald energy, their weapon pods unfolding like the petals of some monstrous flower. They moved with the fluid grace of their kind, beautiful, deadly, and utterly unaware of what awaited them. Anderson's voice cut through the tension. "Commander Zerwind." She didn't ask. She knew. This was the second trap. Not for the humans. Her own people had come to finish what they started, to burn this ship, its crew, and any survivors who might speak of mercy. Ware met her gaze, his expression unreadable behind his visor. "Your call," he said simply. Serwin's claws dug into her palms. She had spent her life believing humans were monsters. Now, she watched as her own fleet prepared to murder a wounded mother and child. The choice was no choice at all. She activated her comm. "This is High Commander Zerwind of the Xerion 7th Fleet." "Stand down." Then laughter. The lead ship's commander responded, his voice dripping with disdain. "Traitor." The first plasma lance fired, and the Indomitable moved. The two Solders Indomitable moved, not with the sluggish, predictable evasion of a Xerion warship, but with a predator's precision, a sudden, brutal acceleration that should have torn its hull apart. The plasma lance seared past, missing by meters, its yellow, green energy dissipating harmlessly into the void. Serwin's breath caught in her throat. She had studied human vessels before. Their designs were crude by Xerion standards, angular, inelegant, lacking the organic flow of living metal. But this was something else. The Indomitable wasn't just a ship. It was a FIV beast. Sensors screamed as the Xerion fleet adjusted, their formations tightening like the coils of a hunting serpent. 6 vessels, each a masterpiece of luminous engineering. Their hulls pulsing with photosynthetic energy. Against them, the human warship should have been nothing. A relic, a prey ship, the Indomitable Chargy. Weir's voice crackled over the calm, almost amused. "You might want to hold on to something." The first railgun round struck before the words finished. A Xerion frigate, its elegant, vine-woven hull designed to absorb and redistribute energy, simply shattered. The impact didn't pierce, it erased. One moment, the ship hung in formation, its luminescent glow a soft emerald against the dark. The next, it was a cloud of molten debris, its living metal screaming as it died. Serwin's claws dug deeper. This wasn't warfare as she knew it. Xerion battles were methodical, elegant, a dance of energy signatures and shield harmonics. But the humans, they fought like cornered wolves. No finesse, no mercy, just raw, terrifying force. The second frigate fired, its plasma lances converging in a lattice of lethal light. The Indomitable's point, defense systems activated, not with the graceful energy dispersal of Xerion tech, but with a storm of hypervelocity slugs that chewed through the incoming fire. The lances detonated prematurely, their energy scattering harmlessly. Then the human ship returned fire, not with another railgun. With water-boarding pods, Serwin's blood ran cold as the projectiles slammed into the nearest Xerion cruiser, their impact shuddering through the vessel's organic superstructure. The pods didn't just breach the hull, they burrowed, their outer shells splitting open to release swarms of armored figures. Exo, troopers, she had read the reports, heard the whispers. But seeing them in action was something else entirely. They moved like nightmares, clad in blackened armor, their visors glowing a dull, hateful red. They carved through the Xerion defenders with brutal efficiency. Monomolecular blades sliced through living metal, as if it were paper. Plasma rifles barked, their shots precise, surgical. A single trooper paused. Serwin's breath hitched as the figure turned, its visor locking onto the wounded Xerion mother clutching her child in the far corridor. For a heartbeat, she was certain the human would fire. Instead, the trooper stepped aside. The fleet's commander shrieked over the comm, his voice raw with fury. "Destroy them." The remaining Xerion ships surged forward, their bioluminescent cores flaring as they prepared a final, desperate strike. The Indomitable didn't retreat, it laughed. The human reinforcements arrived, not one ship. Dozens of vessels, their angular silhouettes blotting out the stars, their weapons humming to life. Serwin's heart pounded. She had been wrong. Humans weren't just monsters, they were as protectors. And they had come for their own. The battle had ended in silence, not the quiet of surrender, nor the hollow stillness of defeat, but the eerie, breathless pause of a predator standing over its prey, deciding whether to kill or spare. Zerwin's claws trembled against the cracked console of her ruined command vessel. The Indomitable loomed in the view screen, its scarred hull still glowing from the heat of battle, its weapons humming with restrained energy. Around it, the human fleet held position, a constellation of warships so vast they eclipsed the stars. She had expected annihilation. Instead, the humans had stopped. Ersek, the scientist, let out a shuddering breath beside her, his bioluminescent veins pulsing erratically. "They're hailing us." Serwin's throat tightened. The humans had every reason to burn them from the sky. The Xerion High Command had ordered the attack. They had fired first. They had lost. The screen flickered to life. A human face appeared. Not the armored terror of the boarding troops, nor the cold calculus of their fleet commanders. A woman, her dark skin was streaked with soot, her eyes sharp but weary. A scar ran from her temple to her jaw, a wound taken in battle, not engineered in some sterile augmentation lab. "Commander Zerwind," she said, her voice low measured. "I am Major Lisa Anderson." Zerwind's spines flattened. The human spoke in perfect Xerion, the syllables smooth, unaccented. They had studied us. They had learned. Anderson didn't smile, didn't gloat. "Your ship is crippled. Your fleet is scattered. You have two choices." Ersek's claws dug into the console. "Surrender," Anderson said, "or die." Serwin's mind raced. This was a trick, it had to be. The humans had shown mercy to the wounded, yes, but mercy was a luxury, not a strategy. The moment they lowered their guard, the humans would strike. Anderson's gaze didn't waver. Wouldn't slaughter the defenseless. A lie. Had to be. Serwin's thoughts spiraled back to the trooper in the corridor, the one who had stepped aside, the one who had looked at a mother and child and chose not to fire. Her claws curled. "Prove it," she hissed. Anderson didn't flinch. Instead, she turned slightly, murmuring something to someone off-screen. A moment later, the feed split and a new image appeared. The wounded Xerion mother. Her child clutched in her arms, both of them wrapped in clean bandages, their injuries tended to by human medics. The mother's eyes were wide, uncomprehending, as a human in a white coat gently adjusted the IV drip beside her. Serwin's breath caught. "They're in our infirmary," Anderson said quietly. "They'll live." Ersek made a sound like a wounded animal. Serwin's pulse roared in her ears. This wasn't just mercy. It was as messagey. The humans could have crushed them. Could have left the wounded to suffocate in the dark. Instead, they had saved them, protected them. Anderson's voice cut through her thoughts. "We're not your enemy, Commander. But we'll defend what's ours." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Serwin's claws uncurled. She had been wrong about so much. The humans weren't mindless monsters. They were something far more dangerous. They were people, and people could be reasoned with. Serwin straightened, her spines lifting in slow, deliberate submission. "We surrender." Anderson nodded once. "Wise choice." The screen went dark. Outside, the human fleet's weapons powered down. For the first time in centuries, the Xerion had met a force they couldn't dominate. And it had spared them. Serwind exhaled, her body trembling with something she couldn't name. Something worse, the Xerion medical frigate, Emerald Tide, drifted in the void, its pulsing yellow, green luminescence flickering like a dying ember. Inside, Commander Xerion stood motionless before the observation blister, her claws flexing against the organic metal of the deck. The battle was over. The humans had won. And yet, they had not slaughtered. That was what unsettled her most. The Emerald Tide was a wounded beast, its photosynthetic power cells dimmed, its vine-like support structures severed in multiple places. The human boarding teams had cut through its defenses with terrifying precision. But then, instead of executing the survivors, they had offered medical aid. Xerion's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a moment, shielding her from the sight of the human warships, hovering just beyond the frigate's shattered hull. Their angular, brutalist designs were an affront to the Xerions, flowing biomechanical aesthetics. Yet they moved with a grace that belied their crude appearance. A soft chime sounded behind her. Ursek, the ship's chief scientist, limped into the chamber. His emerald carapace cracked along one side. His bioluminescent veins pulsed erratically, a sign of deep exhaustion. They are bringing the wounded to their med bays," he signed, his claw tips trembling. "Even the ones beyond our own capacity to heal." As Xerion's spines twitched. That made no sense. The humans had no reason to expend resources on Xerion lives. Unless it was not a tactic. Unless it was instinct. A low vibration shuddered through the deck as a human shuttle docked with the Emerald Tide's secondary umbilical. Xerion turned, her muscles coiling with residual tension. The airlock hissed open, revealing a human soldier, Captain Nathan Ware, his armored frame silhouetted against the harsh artificial light of the corridor. He stepped forward, his helmet retracting with a soft mechanical whine. His face was bare, a deliberate choice, a display of trust or a challenge. Xerion forced herself not to recoil. The human's eyes were too round, his skin too pale, his features grotesquely smooth compared to the textured ridges of Xerion biology. And yet, there was something in his expression that unsettled her more than his appearance. "We found survivors in the lower decks," Ware said, his voice rough but calm. "A female and a juvenile. They're in bad shape." Xerion's breath stilled. Ursek's claws spasmed. "They should not have been aboard. The evacuation pods were destroyed before launch," Ware finished. "We're moving them to our ship. Our medics can stabilize them." Xerion's mind reeled. A mother and child, left behind in the chaos of battle. And now, the humans, the very beings the Xerion had come to exterminate, were saving them. Ware seemed to read the question in her stance. His lips pressed into a thin line. "Because it's what we do," he said simply. And that was it. No grand strategy. No hidden demand. Just action. Xerion's claws dug into her palms. The humans were not the mindless predators the Xerion High Council had claimed. They were something far more dangerous. They were protectors. And if they could extend that protection even to their enemies, what did that say about the Xerion? Ursek's spines drooped. "We have misjudged them." Xerion said nothing. Outside, the human fleet glided silently among the wreckage, their weapons cold, their searchlights sweeping the void for more survivors. For the first time in her life, Xerion felt the weight of shame. And something else. Something worse. The Xerion mother's bioluminescent veins flickered weakly. Her child clutched against her chest as the human medics worked with startling efficiency. Their hands moved with practiced precision, their tools humming with a soft blue glow, so different from the pulsing yellow-green of Xerion technology. The mother's breathing was shallow, her body failing from prolonged exposure to the void. But the humans did not hesitate. Major Lisa Anderson stood nearby, her armored form silhouetted against the dim emergency lighting of the human rescue frigate. She watched, arms crossed, her expression unreadable beneath the reflective visor of her helmet. Xerion could not see her eyes, but she could feel the weight of that gaze, calculating, assessing, yet devoid of malice. Why? The question burned in Serwin's mind again. The Xerion had come to purge these creatures. They had fired upon their worlds, shattered their stations, and left their dead drifting in the void. And yet, here they were, humans, kneeling beside a dying enemy, their hands steady as they administered treatment. Ersik's spines trembled, his voice barely a whisper. They are not what we were told. Serwin's claws flexed. The High Council's words echoed in her skull. Humans are predators. They consume, they destroy, they cannot be reasoned with. But this was not destruction. This was something else entirely. Captain Nathan Weir moved past her, his armor scuffed from battle, his rifle slung across his back. He didn't spare her a glance, not out of dismissal, but because his focus was entirely on the wounded. He knelt beside the medics, speaking in low tones, his voice steady. Serwin's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a moment. She had seen humans fight. She had watched their ships carve through Xerion formations with terrifying precision, their weapons systems adapting mid-battle in ways no living machine should have been capable of. She had witnessed their soldiers stand their ground even as their bodies burned, their defiance unbroken. But this was worse, because if they could fight like demons and show mercy like saints, what did that make the Xerion? The child stirred, a weak pulse of bioluminescence flaring along its tiny limbs. The human medic, a woman with dark eyes and a face lined with exhaustion, smiled. Not in triumph, not in smugness, just in relief. Serwin's chest tightened. Outside the viewport, the wreckage of the battle still drifted, twisted husks of Xerion bio, vessels floating alongside shattered human hulls. But among the debris, human shuttles darted like fireflies, their searchlights sweeping the darkness. Not for salvage, not for advantage, for survivors. Ersik's voice was hollow. They are searching for our people. Serwin said nothing, because the truth was settling upon her like a crushing weight. The humans had not just won the battle. They had won something far more dangerous. And with it, the slow, creeping horror of realization that perhaps, in all the galaxy, the Xerion had never encountered a species more worthy of fear, or more deserving of alliance. Serwin stood motionless in the medical bay, her emerald skin dulled by exhaustion, her bioluminescent veins pulsing erratically. The human ship hummed around her, not with the organic thrum of Xerion bio vessels, but with the deep, mechanical growl of human engineering. It was a sound that should have unsettled her. Instead, it was steady, relentless, like the humans themselves. The child, her child, lay on the medical slab, its tiny chest rising and falling in slow, even breaths. Human machines whirred softly, their unfamiliar technology weaving a web of light and sound over its fragile form. The medic, Major Lisa Anderson, adjusted a fluid drip with hands that had, mere hours ago, been gripping the controls of a fighter craft. Now, those same hands worked with impossible gentleness. Serwin's throat tightened. She had expected cruelty. She had expected vengeance. She had not expected this. Beyond the medical bay's transparent walls, the battle's aftermath sprawled across the void. Wreckage drifted in frozen silence, Xerion bio, hulls ruptured like overripe fruit, human warships reduced to skeletal husks. But among the carnage, human shuttles moved with purpose, their floodlights cutting through the dark. They were not scavenging, they were searching. Ersik stepped beside her, his voice a whisper. They are retrieving our wounded. Serwin did not answer, because the truth was unfolding before her, undeniable and terrifying. The humans had not merely defeated them. They had saved them, and that was far more dangerous. A chime sounded. The human commander, Captain Nathan Weir, stood at the bay's entrance, his armor still scorched from battle. He did not enter, did not demand. He simply waited, an unspoken question in his gaze. Serwin forced herself to meet his eyes. "We have a transmission," Weir said. His voice was rough, but not unkind. From your high command. Ersek stiffened. Serwin's pulse quickened. The humans had intercepted their communications. Of course they had. Weir hesitated, just for a moment, before adding, they're demanding your return. They believe you're prisoners. Serwind exhaled slowly. She had expected demands, threats, a bargaining chip to be used against her people. But Weir did none of that. Instead, he held out a data pad. You should answer them, he said. And then he left. Ersek stared after him, his bioluminescence flickering in confusion. Why would they? Serwind took the pad. The screen glowed softly, displaying an open channel to the Xerion High Command. Her fingers hovered over the interface. This was a test. Not of her loyalty, but of her judgment. She activated the transmission. The face of High Prelate Vexus filled the screen, his amber eyes burning with cold fury. Ah, Serwind, you live. She inclined her head. We do. Then why have you not been executed? Vexus hissed. The humans are savages. They do not take prisoners. Serwind glanced at her child alive, breathing, healing, then back at the screen. You are wrong, she said softly. And for the first time in her life, she spoke the truth without fear. They are not what we believed. Then, slowly, Vexus' expression shifted not to anger, but to something far worse, a understanding. The transmission ended. Ersek exhaled sharply. They will call it treason. Serwind set the pad down. Then let them. Outside, the human shuttles continued their work, their lights cutting through the dark like stars refusing to fade. And for the first time, Serwind wondered if the galaxy was far larger and far stranger than her people had ever imagined. The Xerion command vessel, Emerald Tide, drifted in the void, its once proud organic hull now scarred by battle, its photosynthetic veins flickering with the dim pulse of a dying star. Inside, Serwind stood at the observation deck, her child nestled against her side, watching the human ships move through the wreckage like luminous predators. They were not what she had expected. Not beasts, not monsters, but something far more dangerous. The humans had not destroyed the Xerion survivors. They had not executed the wounded, nor left them to suffocate in the cold. Instead, they had done the unthinkable. They had helped. Medical shuttles, marked with the crimson cross of their species, moved between the drifting husks of Xerion warships, their engines humming with quiet efficiency. Their soldiers, clad in armored exosuits that gleamed like black ice, worked alongside Xerion medics, sealing breaches, stabilizing the injured, carrying the weak to safety. It made no sense. Ersek stood beside her, his bioluminescent veins pulsing with unease. They should have left us to die, he murmured. It would have been the logical choice. Serwind said nothing. Because logic had no place here, she had seen the humans fight, seen their ferocity, their terrifying adaptability, the way they turned defeat into victory with nothing but sheer, impossible will. But now, she saw something else, not weakness. Not hesitation, one they had made without hesitation. Outside, a human dropship detached from the Emerald Tide, its thrusters flaring as it arsed back toward the massive Terran dreadnought, eyes indomitable. Serwind's child stirred, their tiny fingers curling around her wrist. Will they hurt us? They whispered. Serwind hesitated, then, for the first time in her life, she answered without the weight of doctrine, without the chains of the High Prelate's teachings. No, she said. They won't. Ersek exhaled sharply. You realize what this means. The High Prelate will declare us traitors. The entire fleet will be marked for purging. Serwind watched as another human shuttle docked, its bay doors hissing open to reveal a squad of medics carrying supplies. One of them, a human female with dark skin and a scar across her brow, met her gaze through the viewport and nodded once. Serwind straightened. Then we do not return. Ersek's spines flared in shock. What? We do not return, she repeated, her voice steady. We stay, we learn, and when the time comes we stand with them. Then, slowly, Ursek bowed his head, because he understood the galaxy was not what they had been taught. And neither were the humans. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, cold and vast and unforgiving. But for the first time, Serwin did not feel afraid. She felt something else, and that, she realized, was the most terrifying thing of all.